A quick mic check 1 2 on this. Sounds like I'm very hot right there. Sorry, check 1 2. Let me know if you could hear me on the chat. Sounds like we're clipped out a little bit, and maybe that'll be better right there. How you doing, everybody? I'm Ken Bykoff, and welcome to the Peegs Postgame Live. Indiana takes on Minnesota in the Big Ten opener and wins 82-67 in a game that was pretty much their best performance of the year. The first half was, I think, was absolutely their best half of the season, and Indiana managed to use a 16-1 run to get up big in the first half. Well, not big in the first half, I won't say that, but to kind of build a lead in the first half. And that 16-1 run was 15 points. Indiana wins by 15 points, basically kept Minnesota at arm's length the rest of the way and moved to 1-0 in the Big Ten. Now, we will take a little bit of this with a grain of salt because of the fact that it was Minnesota who was did not have they haven't had a great season. So I don't want to overreact on any of this, but I also want you to remember who you're dealing with when it comes to Minnesota. 1 by 4 versus Oklahoma at home or versus Omaha. Oklahoma would be fine. Omaha at home. Lost to North Texas. Beat Yale by 3 at home. Beat Central Michigan by 3 at home. And Minnesota was able to shoot 47.3% from the field overall and hung around at the very least. They only lost the second half by 2 points, which still, it's a 15-point win. But this was an Indiana team that was as efficient as we have seen them this year. And that is certainly a positive. 812-393-2600 is your number. We also take comments on the chat as we open the Big Ten season. So looking forward to hearing from you and just really excited about, a little bit of what we saw from this ball club today because it is a team that has been inconsistent at best. That's the best way that we could say they've been inconsistent, but there were a lot of things to like. Really like the Hoosiers' effort, especially in the first half, especially in basically the first third of the second half. Hustling down the court, beating Minnesota down the court. It reminded me a little bit of Cody Zeller beating people down the floor the way he did back in the day, and so that was very exciting. Much more active defensively than they have been to this point in the season. Hayden Carlisle was back in the lineup, and his energy was really, really important. Now, Minnesota's overall game was on display very clearly in that first half as they were playing real frantic early, taking shots early in the shot clock, and just having situations like that where it's you just want them to be able to. Indiana hasn't been challenged, basically, and wasn't challenged with Minnesota. They played him even. Dawson Garcia, 22 points and 9 of 15 shooting. I was calling him Dr. Dawson because he feels like he has been in school for a long time. That's just because we covered his recruitment as closely as Peegs.com. But it's been a slog with him. And he was really, really effective tonight. Indiana got great balance out of their offense, led by Omar Bello. Ballo, 5 of 5 shooting, 18 points, 7 rebounds. It felt like more rebounds than that. 2 assists on the day. And Ballo also had a block, a steal, played 31 minutes. He was a load inside. And his presence inside changed what Minnesota was willing to do on the floor because he was just the fact that he was there stopped them from going to the basket at time. That was really important. Malik Renew, 16 points on 7 of 10 shooting. He added 7 rebounds and 4 assists versus just 1 turnover. He also had a block and a steal. So Renew was solid. Mackenzie Mbako wasn't great, but he knocked down some shots, 13 points on 5 of 12 shooting, added 3 rebounds and assists. He did have 2 turnovers. The only player for the Hoosiers to be in the negative on the plus minus, he was -1. Off the bench, you got 20 points from Bryson Tucker and Kanan Carlisle, and Tucker was exciting to watch because he was really active on both ends of the floor. 16 points on 6 of 10 shooting, 4 of 6 from the free throw line, added 6 rebounds, had an assist, played 20 minutes. He was plus 15. He was a factor on the floor, and it was really great to see him kind of light up in conference play. Kanan Carlisle, obviously back from missing a couple of games with an injury that's still undisclosed, but 14 points on 5 of 8 shooting, 3 of 6 from 3-point range. He hit 3 of Indiana's 4 made three-pointers on the night. He added 3 rebounds, 5 assists, and he did have a couple of turnovers in 15 minutes. Rounding out the starters, you had Miles Rice with 2 points on 1 of 4 shooting. He had 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He had a turnover. He played 21 minutes, but he just was not in the groove tonight, and he looked out of sorts at times. And Trey Galloway, 1 point on 0 of 1 shooting, had 3 assists, had 4 turnovers, played 26 minutes, and just simply wasn't a factor with the ball in his hands. And he continues to make some mistakes along the way that a guy his who's played as much basketball as he has just shouldn't. I mean, it's that simple. There's some silly passes along the way, so we'll see what it is that he does as the weeks go on. The bottom line with him really is that he has played a lot of basketball. He is a veteran in the conference, and you don't expect him to be inconsistent. And we're seeing inconsistency from Trey Galloway. So he has a way to go with that. 812-393-2600 is the number. Want to hear your thoughts on this IU team as they get off to a 1-0 start in conference play. But while we're waiting for calls, while we're waiting for people to come along, I wanted to turn this over to head coach Mike Woodson during his post-game press conference immediately following the Hoosiers against Minnesota.
Yeah, Coach, I just wanted to start with you guys get Kanan Carlisle back. Sort of how has he looked the last couple of days in practice? What have you liked? And sort of, is he 100% ready to go right now, or is he still sort of, okay, we're working him back in?
Well, he practiced first time full practice and said he felt good coming into today's game, so we played him.
Zach and then Daniel.
Mike, I know at times you guys go smaller, but you still can run those two big lineups. Where do you feel like you are in terms of marrying that to a faster pace? It seemed like you playing fast, but with multiple bigs really worked for you guys tonight.
Well, I mean, it's going to be bigs throughout the Big Ten games that we play, and you know, when we got a chance to go small, we try to do that too. I mean, we've done that every game that we've had this season so far. But again, it's you gauge it based on how the game is going, you know, and who's in the game, and if our small team is rolling, we just roll with them until, you know, we have to go sub because we feel like they might be a little tired and move to the big lineup. So, I mean, it's been good for us both ways, but, you know, I haven't weighed it out. I mean, I base it on matchups and when we do have the small guys in, how they're playing as a unit.
Daniel, then Mike.
Yeah, Mike, on the speed and urgency, and I want to say just the overall number of scores you had, is this kind of a glimpse of the offensive vision, I guess, you had for this team?
Well, again, I thought we played great the first half. The ball moved, and in the second half we started really well, I thought. But, you know, we got to get some things fixed too, because I thought we had some lapses where we just didn't play good offense. I thought there was some selfish play here and there, and we threw the ball away. We didn't make some free throws. I mean, you know, we gotta build on this game, but those are areas that we can fix, and when you get a team down 15, 20 points, you got to remember how you got them down and continue to do the same things that got you the lead. And I don't think we did that coming down the stretch.
Mike, then Todd.
Yeah, with Carlisle and Galloway, you start Galloway tonight. As you said, kind of things are matchup dependent. You imagine rotating those guys based on matchups, or is it more just the minutes, how they balance out? Because they balanced out the minutes tonight, so it's not as important who gets to start.
Well, no, I went with Gallo because we had been starting him, and K9 just came back, and he didn't take it personal. He just came in and did his job, and somebody's got to come off the bench. I can't start everybody, and I don't know if that lineup will stay the same, but the bottom line is he did his job coming in to help us win our first Big Ten game. So we're going to need everybody, regardless of who starts, to play at a high level when they play.
Todd, then Tom.
Mike, Minnesota made 11 of their first 15 shots. Then you held them to 3 out of their next 18, and then another stretch where they went, I think, 6 of 9. When you watch film, obviously you have stretches where you play good defense. What are you seeing that you can kind of accentuate to the team? And then what are you seeing on film when the defense lapses that needs to be improved upon?
Well, again, when we're playing good defense, it's nice to watch film. But when things go kind of sour, there are miscues in terms of switching, and somebody might get beat back door, and shot goes up. You don't put a body on a guy, and he gets an offensive rebound or keeps the ball alive, and then they score. Things like that we have to clean up. Because again, when you're playing in the Big Ten, going through this grind, man, those type of plays can beat you.
Tom, then Lou.
Mike, Bryson Tucker had 8 points in that 16-1 run you had late in the first half to get rolling there. He made his first 4 shots. How important is it for a freshman like that just to get off to a good start and just kind of keep that sort of positive mind frame through a game?
Well, it's very important. When we recruited him, we thought he would be a big piece to the puzzle, and he is. And we just got to keep steering him in the right direction and pushing him to play at a high level, play harder and smarter, and do the things that we need him to do on the floor. And I thought tonight he came in and played a solid ball game, and hopefully that'll be a nice carryover into our next game against Nebraska.
Lou and then Jim.
Coach, I was going to ask about Tucker as well, and you answered part of it, but he seems to have more of an affinity for the mid-range than most modern-day players do. Do defenses sometimes forget about guys shooting jumpers from the inside the key who aren't trying three-pointers because they're so fixated on it?
I don't know. Again, the way the game is played, if you got guys that can make threes, I'm open for them taking them, and we do have guys that can make them, and we're probably not taking a lot more than most teams, but he is good in mid-range, and those count too. Layups and 15, 16-foot jump shots, they count as well if you make them. So the key is making them. So tonight he was pretty good in that area, so I'll take it.
Jim, and then we'll wrap with Mike.
Mike, on Bryson as well, but he's become one of the more consistent scorers for you, and tonight he comes off the bench with those 16 big points. Do you prefer having him come off of the bench, or because you've said that, everyone can't start, but is that something you prefer to have kind of in your back pocket?
Yeah, that's where he's not starting for us. He's coming off the bench, and I thought he came off the bench and played extremely well, and guys, somebody's got to come off the bench. So it's not who starts, who comes off the bench. It's the minutes that you get. It's what you do with the minutes that you get to help your team win. And I've always believed that. And if it's 2 minutes, then damn it, you better make it the best 2 minutes to help our ball club win. That's what it's all about. That's what team is about.
Last question.
Coach, Minnesota was blitzing ball screens. I know that was something that gave you guys a little bit of trouble in the Bahamas. Do you like the progress that your team is making in those situations?
Yeah, we we've seen a little bit of everything in pick and roll this early season, and in some games we're pretty good at. I thought tonight it didn't affect us a whole lot. I got to go back and look at the film, but I think there were times that we could have gotten rid of the ball earlier or quicker than we did, and then that pass might lead to something good. I didn't think once we got it out of there, we were slow in terms of moving the ball once it came out of 2 on the ball, and that's something we just got to get better at and continue to learn.
Thanks, Coach.
The number 812-393-2600. Give us a call. Picked up a caller right there. So thank you so much for waiting while we listened to Woody. But caller, if I can have your name, where you're from, and what you got.
Hey, Ken, it's Zane driving home from Evansville.
Zane from Evansville. Great to hear you, buddy, and great to see you today, too.
No, it's great to see you, too. So just a couple of things to call in. I was listening to the Indiana post game always wraps up so quickly by the time I can get to the car. And so I flipped over to the Minnesota post game show on the Learfield Varsity app, and their coach, Ben Johnson, stood up their broadcast team and did not have a post-game interview with them. And according to the Minnesota play-by-play guy, it's the first time in his 19 years where he did not address the radio crew post-game after a game. So I found that somewhat interesting. And then the only other thing I would like to call and add in is just felt like Assembly Hall tonight was a tad bit sleepy. And I don't know if it was just the aftermath of it still being football season in Bloomington, or if there are other factors involved, but I really hope for IU basketball and just from an atmosphere standpoint that after the new year and once finals are done and the second semester starts, that I hope Assembly Hall feels back to what it, has been, and, for the last 30, 40 years, because, we always brag about how big the student section is, but I don't know if we can legitimately brag about 7,000 students being on hand if only 35 to 40% of those seats are actually filled on a game night against the Big Ten team, nevertheless. So, Ken, appreciate everything that you do, and I'll hang up and listen to your comments.
Well, I
Go
appreciate
Hoosiers.
Yes, go Hoosiers is right. Thank you very much, Zane. Really, really appreciate it. And we'll start with that atmosphere here at Assembly Hall. There's no question that going into this thing, it was a bit subdued. There were a lot of empty seats tonight. It's some people I think had lost some faith along the way. Yeah, it's a Tuesday game. It's a little bit of an earlier tip-off. You could come up with any pile of excuses that you want for why people can't get to the game. Uh, but it's a conference game. And this is a team I think that the faith was shaken a little bit. Faith was shaken a little bit. And, basically the upper balcony on, which side is this? The east side was all but empty. People were late arriving, which happens when you have work and you have all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, the atmosphere here at Assembly Hall has been subdued, to say the least. Now, if Indiana can play the way they did in the first half, string together some games, and you'll see this place liven up a little bit more. This game at Nebraska later this week is going to be a big challenge for this ball club because Minnesota is, obviously a Big Ten opponent, but they have not been good this year. Again, I mentioned that they beat Omaha by 3 points, and have lost some games that they really shouldn't. The fact that the Minnesota coach stood up the radio guys. First off, I feel for the radio guys, and second, it just has not been a good season. You could see plenty of frustration from the coach, but this is a team that lost to North Texas. They barely beat Omaha, they barely beat Yale. They no-show in the conference in the start. Now they fought a little bit. They've had some tough losses. Lost in overtime to Wichita State. Lost to Forest along the way, lost to Michigan State. They're off to an 0-2 start in the Big Ten. But I will say that this was a Minnesota team that played a little bit too frantic, a little bit too loose. A lot of what they did was self-inflicted, to be quite honest with you. in this one. If you look at their turnovers, Indiana, they had 12 turnovers on the day. That they actually, Indiana had more. They had 14 turnovers to Minnesota's 12, but bad shot selection. You had bad, just taking care of the ball, playing too frantic, taking shots too early, running right into to blocks. It's a bad Minnesota team. That's what it comes down to, and that's why you turn in a 15-point loss here. 812-393-2600 is the number. Back to a couple of things that I liked as the Hoosiers got together. Again, best half of the year for the Hoosiers. Carlisle's twitchy energy, I thought, was a huge positive. They had great balance offensively. Minnesota still got into the lane a little bit too easily. And at times, I got to tell you, this felt like an AAU game almost without a ton of defense being played, or at least the defensive intensity wasn't there. It came and went for the Hoosiers in particular. It came and went, and that is something that you want more consistency from your ball club. You just do. And considering what we've seen in other games, I'm going to be really interested to see how this team deals with success when they take on Nebraska. Because yeah, they beat Sam Houston State, and that was very nice, and they beat UNC Greensboro, and again that was very nice. Minnesota is a conference peer that isn't a very good ball club. I think that as Jeff Rabjohns pointed out that on one of those services that are looking at odds that you basically are dealing with uh, a team that is favored in only one Big Ten game this season. So Indiana is unquestionably the more talented ball club of these two. And so they beat them thanks to superior talent. Uh, they turned up the intensity at times, but it still wasn't consistent. So I want to see them be able to go on the road against a Nebraska team that is a better shooting team and not allow them the easy buckets that that Minnesota was able to get at times today. Indiana is very lucky. I don't want to say lucky, but Minnesota had open looks. They were just 2 of 11 from 3-point range. So that's key. And Minnesota wasn't able to rally. Uh, but you play the teams that are in front of you, and Indiana unquestionably had their best half, and I would say their best 40-minute game to this point this season. Doesn't mean it's a real super high bar that we're dealing with when it comes to that, but it absolutely is of something to pay attention to, because Indiana uh, didn't answer a ton of questions today. It has to feel better about the way that it played, but still, a lot of it was offense just going over the top to Wallow, who's big. I mean, he's just big, and he gives people headaches with that. He was real effective inside, and it was just a matter of Minnesota fronting him and the Hoosiers going over the top and being able to score, get to the free throw line that way. Again, I just look at this and I still believe that against better teams, it's not going to be as easy. The Hoosiers were able to spread out Minnesota a little bit more, especially in the first half, and create some driving lanes along the way. Uh, Indiana actually shot more three-pointers in this game than Minnesota did, but both of the teams made a living in the paint. Indiana 42 points in the paint, Minnesota with 40 points in the paint. And again, those 14 turnovers that Indiana had really counters the 21 assists on 30 made baskets. You got to take care of the ball. And the Hoosiers didn't do a great job with that. They did do a good job on the glass. Out rebounded Minnesota 35-22, but it does still leave a lot of questions about this ball club, because it's good. It's the energy and the effort was much better, especially in the first half, and that's something that you could at least start to build on, to say the least. 812-393-2600. The lines are still open. I mentioned in the first half about the effort, and on Twitter, one of the Twitter followers says the effort's really good, and that's the difference made shots are a byproduct. It's funny how that works. And that's absolutely the case. Again, Indiana was beating Minnesota down the floor, and it was a huge difference in what they were able to do. It just were just a huge difference in that. I said that they're playing harder than they have at any time at this point in the season, and Chris on Twitter said, "True, but let's not get excited. Minnie's a bad team, and when they attack the rim, they get any shot they want." Which again, I don't disagree with that either, because Minnesota was able to get to the basket. Ballo was there to shut them down a lot of times, but it was he changes what you have. Lee says intensity was apparent tonight, fighting for rebounds, going after 50-50 balls, and generally creating havoc on defense. And they were. They did. They played a hell of a lot harder than they had at any point this season. And it was great to see. It was great to see. Uh, you heard Mike Woodson talk about his ball club, and Mike Woodson smiled a few times talking about his ball club in the pressing in conference, and that's something that we haven't seen a whole bunch of. He hasn't been excited. He hasn't been uh, all that joyous when it comes to dealing uh, with what he's seen out of his ball club. You heard him be asked just if this is what he envisioned for his team. Uh, I still am a little bit interested in the fact that uh, it's not like Indiana attacked Minnesota any differently. They played with more effort, no question. But Indiana did what Indiana has done, and tonight they made baskets. And in other games, they've struggled. But all those same flaws, the turnovers, the inconsistent defense, the ability of opponents to get to the rim, that makes nothing was all that different tonight outside of Indiana making shots, Minnesota not making shots at quite the same clip, and it was a 16-1 run in the first half that made the difference in this ball game because after that, Minnesota and Indiana they absolutely they held court. This game was tied at 22 with 11:09 left in the first half. Indiana goes on its 16 to 1 run, and they ended up at that point. Let's see what my math is. How long this took? 22. Let's see, get you to 38. Um, which I guess it was 13-1 is what it was because then with the minute 44 46, it was 40 to hell, I'm 36-23. That's where they got it. Went from 22 all to 36-23 over the span of about 7 minutes. And it was Ballo had a layup. Ballo had a layup. Second chance free throw by Ballo. Bryson Tucker. Bryson Tucker. Ballo. So it was Ballo and Tucker that put together basically that entire 13-1 run. And it got there 14-1. I don't know. Maybe I should have taken math class when I was in school. I didn't do very well at math at all. But 812-393-2600 is the number. Would love to hear from you. Would love to hear from you on the chat as well. Um, also, wanted to talk a little bit. Haven't had the opportunity since the college football playoff matchups came out. Indiana is going to be playing at Notre Dame. I don't think it's fair. It's not great. I don't like it. Indiana played all its teams against all its games against Big Ten opponents. 9 of them. Notre Dame lost at home to Northern Illinois. Indiana lost on the road to the #2 team in the country. Basically lost that game because of a couple of special teams mishaps. So go ahead and say what you want to and enjoy the fact that Notre Dame is in the college football playoff. Indiana has every opportunity to beat Notre Dame in that college football playoff because of the fact that um, I use a good team. When people don't believe in them, and that's fine, they'll go ahead and get that chip on their shoulder. I do think it's absolutely appalling the way the tickets work for this thing, where most Indiana fans either won't have the opportunity to get a ticket or are going to have to pay an exorbitant amount to be able to see the game. at Notre Dame. There's a story in the Indy Star with our friend Zach Osterman talked about how tickets for this game are going about triple what any other college football playoff opening round game is. And it's not much of a reward for making the college football playoff if your fans can't come. And quite frankly, I think it's bullshit. But here we are. That's how it is. This is not designed to help, to say the least. You don't have to make it half and half. And I know there's a lot of season ticket holders at Notre Dame and a lot of these different schools as well. But it just doesn't seem right that you have to give up so much of an advantage when you're at that. But that's coming up December 20th. That'll be a heck of a matchup. We've got a ton of time to talk about that between now and then. But at Simon Scott Assembly Hall, 82-67 was your final score. Go ahead and give you a last call for some phone calls. Here, 812-393-2600 is the number. The Hoosiers next take on Nebraska. And although Indiana's offense has been solid this season, they've put up points. At the very least, I'll say that they put up points. They haven't done a great job defensively uh, in terms of just teams at bay. Everybody saw what they did with Louisville, with Gonzaga, even Providence at times. Indiana, uh, the defense just isn't great job. Now, I mean, you give up 71 points to Sam Houston. You give up 89 to Louisville, 89 to Gonzaga, 73 to Providence. Uh, all along the way, you need to have your teams be able to lock down. And Kanan Carlisle and his energy really helped spur a lot of that. I think that his activity, Bryson Tucker's activity on the defensive end, both of them, is really incredibly important and really motivated this team. And there was a whole different energy, and I could tell just from the opening tip off that Mike Woodson, at the very least, got to these guys at least for one game to be able to turn up the intensity. Are they going to be able to do it game over game over game? That remains to be seen. But I liked what I saw tonight in terms of effort, and to me, that is what changed everything. It was the effort of the ball players, not the system, not just that they were making shots, and they were doing a nice job of shooting the ball. You can't go 56.6% from the floor overall, and uh, you're hitting shots. That's what that means. But you look at the other things, and it's a lot of what we've seen in the past too. Indiana just 4 of 14 from 3-point range, 18 of 29 from the free throw line. That's 62%. A team not making threes, not converting their free throws. That'll come back to bite you against better teams. Luckily, on a Monday night, Minnesota is not a very good team. And so that certainly helps the Hoosiers in what they're able to do. Score 44 points in the first half. Uh, outscore Minnesota by a bucket in the second half, 38-36. They played them even after that 13-1 run. That's basically what I'm talking about. Now you can't discount that. That's what allowed them to build the lead. Indiana never let Minnesota back into it or build any real momentum in the second half, and that's a positive. But it is against a better team. It's going to be different. I'm really going to be interested in the next conference home game, which doesn't happen until January. Uh, just what the crowd is going to look like. Always along, during the Christmas games when you're talking about playing Charlotte um, and Winthrop, I think it is. Those are the couple of games where, no, Chattanooga and Winthrop. Uh, it, those games are usually relatively sparsely attended, but it's going to be that home game against Rutgers and then the one January 8th against USC. I'm really interested to see, especially if IU struggles at Nebraska, what it is that this crowd is going to be like. Because there's a lot of nervous people. around here. Nebraska sits at 6-2. Have losses to St. Mary's, lost to Michigan State, lost big to Michigan State last time out. It's not like they've put together a great season to this point, but they did beat Creighton earlier this year, up on North Florida. So we'll see. But at least for one night, Indiana put together its best half and was able to keep Minnesota at arm's length the rest of the way in an 82-67 win. Now it's on to Nebraska on Friday, and just see what the Hoosiers do when they play their first true road game of the season. That's all the time we have on the Peegs Postgame Live. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to remind you to visit Peegs.com for the very best in IU football and basketball coverage you're going to find anywhere. Nobody covers Hoosier recruiting better than Jeff Rabjohns, Matt Weaver, Trevor Andershock, and Jared Kelly. So come be a part of a thriving and exciting community at Peegs.com. Folks, you are not going to be disappointed. Folks, we're out of time. But for now, and for Jeff, Matt, Trevor, and Jared, I'm Ken Bykoff saying thanks for listening, everybody.